If you've been wondering if you can buy an investment property by using the equity in your current home, then I want to run through a quick example of how that may be possible. So in this scenario, let's assume that you own your own home and that home is worth $1.25 million. And you've got some debt on that home, which most people do, and that debt is sitting at around $750,000. So you may have bought $1 million property with an 80% loan. So you borrowed 800, you paid a bit down, and the house has grown in value. And now you have some equity in the property. So equity is the difference between the value of the property and the level of the debt. So in this circumstance, you've got $500,000 worth of equity in that property. But when we're looking at investing, we really think about usable equity. And the usable equity, we typically only go up to 80% of the property value, which in this case, 80% of 1.25 is worth 1 million. So the usable equity that you've got in the property is $250,000. And with that usable equity, banks are prepared to lend that to you for a variety of reasons. It might be to complete a renovation. It might be for school fees. It might be for a holiday. It might be for a car or a boat or a caravan or something. But the way that we like to think about using the equity is more for investment purposes. And this is what we want to run through today. So when we're talking about investments, it may not necessarily be property. You might have a financial advisor and you might look to borrow to invest in the share market or manage funds or something like that. So if that's a strategy that you're looking to consider, then speak to your financial advisor around how to go about that. So if in this scenario, if we want to buy an investment property, we've got $250,000 of usable equity. So what would we do with that? So the structure that we've got at the moment is we have loan one for $750,000. We'll have loan two that we will set up against this home for $250,000. So we've got $750 for the first one, $250K for the second one, and then we will use that $250K for the deposit for the next property that we want to purchase, as well as covering some upfront costs such as stamp duty, could be conveyancer fees, could be some other legal fees, a buyer's advocate costs, things like that. So we would have $200K left over once we've paid for all those upfront costs. That would be the deposit for this property. And then we would borrow another $800,000, which would be loan three, $800K, and secured against the investment property. So you would have the first two loans secured against your own home, the third loan secured against your investment property. And typically, now you do need to speak to your accountant about this, but the investment loans, being loan two and loan three, to buy the investment property, are generally tax deductible. So speak to your accountant about that. And what that means is that you can reduce your tax liability, look at some negative gearing strategies and things like that to accelerate the growth of your wealth. Now, the power in buying an investment property, I think, comes from the capital growth that you can experience. So let's assume, again, a round figure of a 5% growth rate on the value of the properties. So at 5% on a $1.25 million property, you are growing the capital value of the property by $62,500 per year. On this $1 million investment property, you are growing by $50,000 per year. So you've accelerated your capital growth earnings quite considerably. And if it grows, on the assumption that it grows at 5% year on year, you have now got a couple of assets that are growing at a combined rate of $112,500 per year. So that is, let me just make that a 5 to correct that one. And that is how you can accelerate your wealth creation. And once you've owned these properties for a couple of years, you may then want to consider, do you want a third property? So we can get a second investment property and then a third investment property and so on. So the process is essentially the same. We just work on a strategy around what is the most tax effective way of funding that for you. So there you have it. In a nutshell, that is how you can use the equity in your property to buy an investment property. Cheers.